Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Healing with Coherence podcast, founded by Radiant Life Technologies. As you already know, this podcast show is diving deep into the transformation of healing science, healing technology that is taking place in the world today. I'm Michail, and I'm your host, and I'm thrilled to introduce you to yet another guest into our show. This time, it is Dr. Catherine Clinton. Dr. Clinton is a naturopathic physician. She's also a quantum biology health educator and a guide. And we'll be talking to Dr. Catherine today about her own understanding of quantum biology. I'm very thrilled to ask her questions around what quantum healing exactly is, how it takes place in our organism, and what it is necessary to do in order to achieve quantum health and quantum coherence in our organism and in our being as a human beings. Before we jump into the conversation, I would like to ask you for your support. If you have not yet subscribed to our show on any of the audio or video platforms that you have been listening or watching our episodes, please do so now by subscribing, liking, commenting, and sharing our show. You are convincing the algorithm to give us more space, to share our show and episodes with more listeners, and to help us spread the word about the deeply intriguing topics with more listeners. Now, without any further ado, let's welcome Dr. Catherine Clinton to our show and jump into our conversation. Hello, Catherine. Welcome to Healing with Coherence.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to talk with you today.
Me too, Catherine. I've been looking forward to talking to you today. I have so many questions to ask you. I would like to focus mainly, of course, on your main area of expertise, which is quantum biology, quantum health. And another keyword that I've noticed that you use quite often, and I would like to dive deeper into your understanding of that, which is coherence. And my feeling is that coherence and quantum biology and quantum health are very, very closely related, if not actually one and the same in a way. So these are the topics that I would like to talk to you about. And before actually I ask you my first question, I wanted to say as well what triggered me to invite you to the podcast. Now, this show has been founded by Radiant Life Technologies. This is, I wouldn't say a company, it's a small group of people who have been working on researching and developing different tools, let's say, technological tools to help people be more self-sufficient in terms of their health. And many of these tools are built around frequency, light, and sound, and they are impacting mainly on the water in the organism. And these are the main areas that you work with. So I was fascinating to see that actually you work with the same principles that I've been looking into with my friends. And I wanted to ask you and start with actually your journey leading you to deeper understanding of these areas. Because as far as I understood, you had your own healing journey that transformed your understanding of healing. So what was the journey actually? How it started? What you can tell me about it?
Yeah, absolutely. I am a licensed naturopathic physician here in the States. And to do that, you have to go through 4 years of graduate school. And during that time, I was diagnosed with two autoimmune conditions and Lyme disease. I just didn't have the foundation to make it through the stress of that medical training. And I got really sick, and it was actually the physician that I was doing clinical rotations with. She was also my physician. She encouraged me to look at psychoneuroimmunology. And that's just a big word for how our thoughts and emotions impact our health. And it was incredibly profound understanding how my own thoughts and reactions, my unconscious narrative that had been running for decades, how that was impacting my health, my state of inflammation, my immune system. And at the same time, I was researching mitochondrial health, and I came across an article from Martin Picard, and he was making a association between our mental state and the efficiency and function of our mitochondria, those little organelles in our cells that make energy. And there was also research coming out from UC Berkeley looking at quantum coherence, or they called it a quantum beat in photosynthesis and photosynthetic bacteria. And it just opened up this incredible world to me of how frequency, how energy, whether that be light or a sound wave or a wave of electromagnetic frequency, our thoughts and emotions, whatever kind of frequency we're talking about, there seems to be this language of frequency in the body. And even though I was trained in naturopathic medicine, there was not a lot of emphasis on this in my training. We talked a lot about nutrition and pharmaceuticals and natural alternatives and all these things, but not a lot on frequency. And so my mind was completely blown, and I continues to be, because there's so much research on how light, how sound, how these fields of energy, whether, like I said, it's electric or magnetic or electromagnetic, the quantum field, how these things impact our biology.
Amazing, amazing. Well, talking about frequency, you say that you have been, as a naturopath, you have been looking into nutrition. You've been looking into herbs, but actually, at the end of the day, it is still frequency, isn't it? Because every herb actually has its own frequency. Food has its own frequency. So at the end of the day, we end up with dealing with frequency in whatever field of healing. We look into, right?
Yeah, definitely. And thinking about the things that I learned without that underlying explanation of frequency, it's easy to see how that beautifully describes and explains what's happening. I mean, with homeopathy, for example, that was something that we were trained throughout the 4 years. I actually went 5 years because I got sick, but it was something that was not really understood. It was the explanation for it wasn't there. The anecdotal evidence, the people that got better from it was there, right? But how is this working? And this idea that these plants, that everything has a resonant frequency or vibration, and that vibration can be held in water, is like, oh, now it opens up a whole new way of understanding what I did learn in school and what I currently use with myself, my family, and my patients.
Catherine, how difficult it was for you to accept this truth, let's say, or this view on life and on healing, because it's a complete transformation from what we have been taught to think about health.
Yeah, and I think that I was perfectly poised to accept this view because of some of my background before I went to school. Before I went to school, I was really active in a martial art called Taekwondo. And at the same time, I was understudying a licensed midwife, a traditional midwife. And
Okay.
she was using quantum healing, but there were no words for it like that. It would be a really difficult birth, and she would go outside and she would take off her shoes and stand barefoot, and it was dark. I was like, "What are we doing? Like, there's a really intense situation. Why are we coming outside to do this?" And she was grounding, and she was connecting to that field, and she was centering herself and expanding her energy, but there was no word for it back then. But when I started to discover these things, it just explained everything so perfectly. In my martial art training, the your perspective, and it's not even perspective like, "Oh, I feel good about this, positive thoughts." It's this connection with a greater energy source. And so in my martial art training, we would often break bricks, and they were these concrete slabs of bricks, and we would pile them with little pieces of wood in between, so there were spaces in between the bricks. But I mean, I have really small wrists. I'm not a big Hulk strong person, but I could break 3 or 4 bricks if I could connect to this energy. And if I couldn't, there was no way I could break them. I couldn't even break one. My hand would come away scratched and hurt, and, so I had a real visceral understanding of the power behind this field of energy, but I could never explain it. And I never really felt a need to until I was in a position where I was looking at people's health and I really wanted to know what's happening. How do I get better? How do I make other people better? How are we doing this? How is life working? And so it was easy for me to adopt this perspective because there had already been this foundation built in my earlier years where I had experienced this field with martial arts. I had experienced this energy working underneath a traditional midwife, and so I was already looking for ways to explain this that had previously been unexplained.
Beautiful. When I was thinking about quantum biology and quantum health and just trying to find words how to explain that in an understandable way, uh, I was thinking about actually the different levels of understanding of the human body and how we see life materializing, manifesting, right? So we have like physiology, we have biology, we have chemistry, and somewhere there on a deeper and deeper level is the quantum biology, which in my understanding is the biology of the finest expression of life, the finest particles. It's not even particles, but it's basically untouchable energy levels. And it is the same thing like physiology, but physiology is the matter we can touch. It is the muscles, the skin, and tendons and everything. But as they say, actually, in reality, there is no real touch, right? Because there is no real there is no real matter, but it's everything is just a very thick or dense energy vibrations. Um, so I'm trying to understand. So where was your or where is your main challenge in terms of introducing your own patients and clients into biology and quantum health, um, in leading them through from the level of physical understanding of life to that finest
Mhm.
level of quantum biology? How long is that way? How long it takes people to understand that? And what has been your biggest challenge in that area?
Yeah, I think the biggest challenge is just making it succinct enough for people to not lose attention span with it, right? And we can get really complicated and talk about quantum mechanics and phenomenon in living systems and all these things. But really, I think that for people to understand, it's really the study of the smallest pieces of life, right? And chemistry, which a lot of us had to endure in school and balance those equations. And this is an oxidizing agent and that's a reactant, is really talking about quantum biology. There's a way of looking at health where it is about that flow of electrons. And there's a way of looking at health where pain, inflammation, disease is a deficiency in electrons. And how do we get electrons to where they need to be in the body so that we can be healthy and vital and have long, vital lives? And So we can get really sciencey and cloak it in all this terminology and research, but really, what I tell people is that it's really the flow of energy, and I'm not only speaking of energy that we don't know about, right? Like we know the quantum field is there and the Casimir effect, that there's something else there happening, but really on a really basic level, like middle school chemistry. We know that we have protons and usually a neutron in the nucleus, and then we have these electrons that are really hard to pin down as matter. They are more like energy, these waves of energy. And how do we get that energy where it needs to be in the body to create a source of well-functioning health in the body. And the body is perfectly suited to do this, from our interactions with light, the water in our body, this collagen matrix that we have that's lined with water, and our interaction with sound and light and frequency of fields, and how that can induce this flow of electrons in the body. And so really I try to keep it simple with people and say, really, we're looking at whether you're electron deficient in an area, and how do we get electrons there?
Okay, okay, that sounds good. That sounds very interesting. How do you usually start a session with a client?
Well, usually what I'm doing when I first see a patient is I'm just giving them space to tell their story. I think that most of the people that come and see me, usually I'm at the end of a long line of specialists and they haven't been able to get better. And so what I do in that first appointment is I just give them space to tell their story. And I think in that there's medicine. And from there, we talk about some of this way of looking at the body, and supplementing it with energy so that it can be how it needs to be to function well. I mean, we know from the work of Douglas Wallace that any dip in energy production in the mitochondria is associated with every modern disease we have out there. So it's really vital that we are intervening at that level. And so what I do with my patients is I allow them to tell their story so that there is a space of safety for them, so their nervous system is calm, so that they feel heard. I think that is the first medicine really that I offer. And then I start talking about what I'm hearing in their story and in their lifestyle that could be sources of draining that energy, or sources of danger signals in the body or in the environment that could be leading to a deficiency in these electrons, and how do we get them back?
Well, we are the story that we tell to ourselves, right? I mean, that's very much about it. Because it's, like talking about the frequency, and we mentioned so many different sources of frequency that are impacting on us, and now you are mentioning, I think, one of the main sources, which are our thoughts. It's the language that
Mm.
we, and the story that we talk to ourselves. So it is very much in resonance with how I see people using the tools that I mentioned at the beginning of radiant life technologies like comra therapy and other tools, where actually, the tool is one of the tools that actually can help you go through the process, but the process is something that you need to undergo yourself. And as well, you need to start being more aware of actually what are you saying to yourself, what your life is all about, what is your environment, how do you talk to yourself and to other people, and so on. So I see basically you approach the healing process in the same way. And there is another phenomena that I'm looking, or I'm actually not surprised to hear, is that you say you are not the first in the queue. You are probably towards the end of the queue, Why is that? I don't understand why people, they have to go through the whole all these challenges with different doctors and modalities and I don't know, looking for solution. And at the end, they this is the end solution that they end up with you. They finally find the help. Why is that? Do you think so?
I think just by the structure of our medical system, when someone's handed a diagnosis, that is the opposite of empowering, right? It is entering into this relationship of you are the doctor, you're up there, you've handed me this label. Now I have to look to you for solutions. And a lot of people spend a lot of time in that dynamic. And Western medicine offers a lot of tools and has been wonderful for a lot of people, but it only goes up to a certain point. And there is a dead end there. And that's where my patients come in. Either it's because their doctor isn't fully investigating, isn't giving them that space to tell their story and believe their story, or they're just not getting better on the tools that they're being given, whether that be pharmaceuticals or whatever it may be that they're being offered. They just aren't getting better. And so they finally look for more options. And that's when they come to see me in most cases.
And if I understand correctly, what you basically do at the end of the day, it is because you mentioned this empowering, and that's a very important point. Because my own understanding is that the role of the healer is actually empowerment through opening the eyes of the patient or of the client, um, that at the end of the day, their own health is a question of their own taking responsibility for their own health. Um, so how do you lead people towards taking responsibility for their own health?
I try to do it by really restoring that awe that we have in the body. I think that so many practitioners try to sort of browbeat this, it's your responsibility, and the person's already sick. And they're like, I, I'm here. This is me taking responsibility. I'm asking for help. I am struggling in doing this. And so, what I try to do is give them information that restores the sense of awe that they have in the body. And from there, it's not a like, okay, I got to take responsibility, like trudging through a hard workout or something, right? Like, okay, I got to keep going. It's this like, wow, I have an incredible body and it's embedded in this incredible ecosystem. And I have the power to create health in that body. I can take steps right now to help the vitality of this incredible body I have. And so it's something that they want to do after that awe is reinstored, because so many people come to me and that awe is missing. It is broken, right? They're like, especially with autoimmune conditions that I see. When you look up what is an autoimmune condition, the internet tells you it's your body attacking itself. So these people see their body as a threat. They don't feel safe in their body. They wonder what they did to make it turn against them. They have been talked and counseled by other doctors that um, their body is broken. And so what I try to do is shift that perspective and say that the body isn't broken, it's responding to danger signals. And look at how intelligent and incredible it is. And I try to wow them with some of the recent research and stories so that they walk away from the office with a renewed sense of awe in their body and a renewed sense of hope.
That's awesome. I really love that because I can deeply resonate with that. And I really love the moment in the podcast discussions when I can see the title of the podcast, right, of the episode, and here I can see it's the reinstalling on reintroducing the state of awe. That's something around that. It's a beautifully expressed, because the other thing that I see in what you're saying is that actually modern medicine, as effective as it could be, has really have been having this impact on actually diminishing that state of awe from our beings, basically diminishing it to a state of some uh, mechanism that actually has nothing magical in it. It is just parts. One part gets broken, another gets broken. We get older, so basically we are disintegrating, and that's it. But we forget how much awe and how much magic there is actually in what we truly are. So I really love that strategy and approach of reintroducing the state of awe in the human's understanding of what we truly are.
Yeah, because it's beautiful, and being able to recognize and have faith in that incredible system that we're given in our body and how it's interconnected with the world around us. So many patients that I see have a lack of safety. They don't have a sense of belonging. They don't have a sense of safety. And I think reminding them how beautiful the world is that they live in and how the rising and setting of the sun can be a consistent, unconditional source of belonging to them. When I see the sun rise in the morning, I feel a sense of gratitude. I feel a deep sense of belonging. I'm here where I'm supposed to be. And that ripples throughout my biology and it makes me healthier. And these are simple, free things that we can do to reinstate that sense of awe, but also nurture these relationships with the world around us, the ground beneath our feet, the sun, the moon, the seasons, the birds singing in the trees. All of these things have powerful effects, and contrary to our human relationships, which are wonderful and necessary, but they're also human, right? We're all human. There's always friction that can come up. And with nature, there's no friction. That sun is going to rise. Those birds are going to sing. That ground is going to be underneath our feet. And we can rely on that. And we can build a deep sense of belonging and safety by cultivating these relationships. And even though we could talk about the science of grounding and circadian biology and all these things, I think one of the biggest things that it offers is this sense of relationship, this sense of belonging. Just that in itself is medicine.
Well, it's about, a different expression as well comes to mind. It's about reintroducing the beauty in the organism, bringing back the beauty of the organism, and this leads me to structured water, because I've heard you speaking in other interviews about actually the how structured water looks like. We know all the research that has been done around that. We have as well. We've seen the different photographs and art pieces created by actually making photos of the crystals of the structured water and so on, and they are tremendously beautiful. And that's how our organism looks on a deeper level when it is in this state of coherence. So can you talk a little bit about structured water and just explain how structured water works? About the organism being a crystal itself. I heard you about talking about that as well. Can you reveal a little bit more about these topics to the listeners, please?
I'd love to. Well, I think that this area of science has been theorized for over a century. And it wasn't until the early 2000s that Professor Gerald Pollack first identified a fourth phase of water. He calls it exclusion zone or easy water. And that's the name of his book, The Fourth Phase of Water. And what he was doing was he was studying hydrophilic or water-loving surfaces. And we're used to talking about water as a liquid, as a solid ice or steam, gas. But this idea of a plasma water is something that is relatively new in the zeitgeist. And what he was looking at are these water loving surfaces and how when liquid water comes up to the surface, it takes on a different structure. It's more gel like, it's viscous. Professor Pollack theorizes that it is a lattice, a hexagonal lattice, like a bee. And this easy structured water builds against our water loving surfaces like our cell membranes, our fascia, our DNA, our proteins. And it's infrared energy that causes this water, this different structured water, to build against, let's say, a cell membrane. And as this easy cell-bound water is building in the presence of infrared energy, it's kicking out a positively charged hydrogen or a proton and creating what researchers are calling a proton-rich zone or proton wire. And the separation of charge between this easy water, which is negatively charged, it has a negative electrical charge, and this proton zone in the water, which is positively charged, that separation of charge, just like a 9-volt battery, holds potential energy. And in the laboratory, they took an electrode and put it in the negatively charged structured water that was forming against the cell and one in that positively charged zone of water. And that separation of charge was enough to light an LED light bulb in the laboratory. So it holds energy and it is able to really act as a receiver for different frequency information. We know that it responds to sound, it responds to ultraviolet light. Ultraviolet light excites this form of water. Infrared light builds this form of water. And there are researchers out there looking at how and it responds to electromagnetic frequency, magnetic fields, right? So we have this language in the body that can be processed via this liquid crystal water that's around our structures. And there are theories out there and experimental evidence. Irina Kosick has done amazing work with her resonance recognition model, showing that this infrared energy can be passed from cell to cell via this structured water, this easy water surrounding the proteins. And so it's this incredible new understanding of how the body is working. You know, what I learned in school and what people are still being taught is that it's all this chemical model. And we have these biological keys bouncing around the cell at random, coming into the receptor, unlocking the receptor, and then action happens. Well, each one of our cells is completing millions of tasks each second. Mathematically, that is impossible with this random collision model. And that's where quantum biology really comes in and starts to explain things in this language of frequency that can happen much more efficiently, right? It can happen at the speed of light because we're talking about light. And that helps us understand that this model of randomness that we have adopted and have been teaching and utilizing in medicine is not the only answer. And for me, that's really exciting because that randomness model is scary. It's really built on fear in a way. If there's nothing we can do to control it, and we're just victims of this random DNA mutation or random collision, it really, again, is disempowering. And it really brings in this beautiful understanding of an invisible blueprint in the world. And I love this new expansion in our understanding.
Catherine, do you have the experience, or do you think that actually, for example, consuming structured water, which is of course part of the, let's say, if I understand correctly, of the quantum healing or quantum biology healing protocol. Drinking structured water or using sources of structured water. Does it work on the principle that you are introducing, as I said at the beginning, my understanding is that structured water is a water which consists of all these beautifully designed structures and molecule structures and crystal structures, and through that basically you are reintroducing the beauty of the organism. You are kind of reminding the organism and the water in the organism how it should be, so basically you are introducing a quantum or coherent environment through drinking that water into your organism, and this is something that reminds your organism, well, hey, that's how it should be. So the molecules inside, they have the blueprint, as you said, that they can look at, and they can start try to mimic it in a way. Is that the
That's a great
mechanism?
yeah. Yeah, well, I think it's important to understand that Pollock's work isn't the only one out there doing research. There were a couple of researchers who created the quantum electrodynamic theory of water. And what I was talking about is this different form of water in a living system. And what you're talking about is what about the water we're drinking, right? And this idea of quantum electrodynamic theory of water talks about these coherent domains in water, these clusters where the hydrogens in water are bonding. And what we find in those clusters is that there inside of the cluster is just electromagnetic frequency. And this cluster is vibrating at that frequency, and it is able to hold this energy. So when people talk about drinking more coherent water, I think oftentimes we think, okay, that water is coherent and it's going to go right onto our cells and do what she's talking about here, build this easy water. I think another way for us to think about it, because those structures are so dynamic, they're always changing. So when we drink that coherent water, it's not that that coherent water goes and immediately is corresponding to an increase in easy water around a cell. I think what that water is doing is it's holding energy, more energy for our body to use, and energy and information, like you said. So I think that's a way for us to think about drinking this coherent or energized water. And the research is still coming around human studies, but it's really fascinating to look at it in agriculture, to look at it with animals, and to see how it's impacting health in those areas. I mean, we see clearly with agriculture, it's increasing crop growth, it's increasing health, it's allowing for less water to be used, right? So you don't have to water those crops as often, and it's changing the microbiome of the soil. And how is it doing that? I think it's because of these domains of water holding energy and information that the whole system starts to use. And so it's just incredible. I think they're different things, but coming back to this idea that water can hold energy and information. It's absolutely fascinating.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. It's actually the whole principle of the so-called energy on informational medicine, right? Or many medical healing or informational healing, which is about reintroducing information in the organism, which actually can help heal. I mean, it brings the healing message. It brings the healing message into the organism. And another way how to do that. So we're talking about water here. I ask about water, but you've been mentioning as well light frequency and color frequency. What are the, let's say, principles and modalities that you would be usually using when it comes to light and color healing, for example, or using information information, the principle of informational and energetic healing in light with light and color?
Great question. I think some of it's individual, but what's not individual is that as humans, we have a circadian rhythm to our body. It was 2017 that three researchers were awarded the Nobel Prize for their work on chronobiology. And that's just a big word for how light impacts our cells. And it's profound. Almost every cell in our body has a circadian gene, or what they call a circadian clock. So as light enters our eye, on the back of the eye, there's a specialized layer of skin called the retina. And the retina is, some of the cells there are rich in melanopsin. And these are sensors, light sensors, picking up on the light in our environment. And so when we look at whatever organ we want to look at, we look at the liver or the lung or the heart, it is circadian driven. So if we are not aligned with the rhythm of the sun, both as it rises throughout the day and then as it sets in darkness, if we're not aligned with that rhythm, then our biology has a sense of chaos in it, right? That circadian rhythm brings with it some coherence to the body. And what do I mean by aligning with it? I mean, getting out in the first hour of waking, getting some of that morning light in our eyes allows us to set up all kinds of biological cascades in the body, hormonal, inflammatory state, our metabolism, not to mention actual organ function. And that is such an important piece that so many of us are missing, right? We hit that alarm button as many times as we can. We get ready in our artificial lighting, then we drive in our closed window car, then get out in the office, and we don't spend hardly any time, less than 15 minutes outside in natural light. And if I had a light meter right now, what I would see is that an indoor lighting situation, the way we measure light is lux or lumens. And in a household, it might be 100, 200 lumens. In an office environment with those bright fluorescent lights, it might get up to 500 lux. If we go outside, even on a cloudy, dreary day, I'm here in Oregon, the sun is behind a veil of gray clouds. Even today, it's the lux is going to be in the thousands. We are going to be exposed to the full spectrum of visible light, infrared light, ultraviolet light. Even when the sun goes down in the winter, closer to the horizon where we can't get ultraviolet B light, we still get ultraviolet A light. We're exposed to this huge spectrum, and it's like nutrition. A way we can think about it is light nutrition. And our indoor lighting is just a very small band of blue light. And it's like eating the same thing day in, day out. We will get deficient in different nutrients. And that's how we really are with the spectrum of light when we are comparing indoor light with outdoor light. So getting out in the morning, taking a break outside, taking a phone call outside, a meal outside, a walk outside, and then lowering the lights at night because our body needs those cues as well. So it's this incredible symbiotic relationship that we have with the light in training so many different things in our body.
Great, great. This sounds very interesting, and I've been as well myself experimenting and with what the impact of the sunlight on me is in different times of the day. I mean, I cannot imagine living without sunlight. But you just mentioned yourself that there are in the spectrum of the sunlight there are different color spectrums, basically different colors. And this leads me, to I've been thinking a lot about the and comparing a lot with actually what we have been trying to do with Radiant Life Technologies and what we've been actually researching with what has been the let's say, the biohacking mainstream now. Everybody's talking about the red light as something which is tremendously helpful. It is very helpful about for the recharging the mitochondria, which you mentioned a few times as well. But actually, red light is just one part of the spectrum. Okay, you mentioned as well the violet, the ultraviolet light. Then there is as well green and yellow light, which have their impact as well. And actually, part of what we've been doing is we have a tool which uses infrared laser as a main component, but also red light, violet light, and yellow green light in a coherent whole. And I've been really trying to explain to people who are just being introduced to a red light therapy that's actually only the beginning of how light can be used to heal the organism. Have you been looking yourself into what could be beyond red light therapy only? How to use other light therapies as well, and other colors of the light spectrum to heal the body? And what is your experience with that?
Sure. I think that it's exciting and important for us to get out of that kind of binary thinking, right? Red light good, blue light bad. There are blue light technologies out there that are wonderful for the skin, that can do things to help produce immune system function. Green light has been really well researched for migraines and pain. It's been researched for kidney function. And so we're starting to understand that, of course, we get good results with red light, and we're like, okay, it's all about red light. But no, that whole spectrum, back to that analogy of it being like nutrition, we need all of those different vitamins. We need all of those different spectrums of light as well. Yellow light, and these things impact the mitochondria as well. We see yellow light working with the mitochondria, just like we see red light working with the mitochondria. So while I love red light therapy, I think that the emerging science around green and yellow and blue, the ultraviolet spectrums, the infrared spectrums, I think it's important for us to understand that it isn't just removing one spectrum out, right? It's this rainbow, this kaleidoscope that we are used to. We have evolved over millennia with that natural light source of the sun, which is rich and diverse in the spectrums that it offers. So, of course, we would now start seeing all this evidence and research out on how beneficial those different spectrums can be.
Catherine, that said, what do you think is or how do you envision the future of health and healing?
I'm very hopeful that we will continue to expand our understanding of this language of frequency. I hope that Mm, I often have people say, well, why do we need to wait for the research? Like, people have known this, we've intuitively known this, and it's true. But I think at this point in time, we are massively disconnected from what we've always known as humans, that being outside is important, that the sun is important, that the season is important. So I'm hoping that this expanded view of health and life in general will bring us back into connection with the natural world around us. And we can start to expand the benefits and expand healing in people in ways that aren't always chemical, in ways that are really affecting this frequency language in the body, sound, light, um, frequency of all kinds of energized fields, I call them, right? Whether we're talking about electric or magnetic or EMF, whatever it may be, or the quantum field, whatever it may be, it holds this vibration and this idea that we are all vibration. Every bit of us has its own vibration. Every part of the cell, every tissue, every organ has its own unique frequency. And when we can start to understand how energy seems to be providing this blueprint, this geometry of matter, then I'm quite hopeful that we can bring empowerment and healing to more people more efficiently and more accessible than some of the options out there now that are quite expensive.
I really, really hope so as well. And to end up even more on a even more positive frequency, let's say, what would be your final message to all people that have been struggling to find relief, to get back to a healthy state of being, and eventually, yeah, looking for a solution which they haven't yet found? What would be your message to them?
My message would be that the body and the world we live in are much more magnificent than we give it credit. Our body is incredible, and the world that we live in is incredible, and they are really interwoven into the same web. And there's so much possibility out there. So I just send a message of healing and hope to everybody.
Thank you so much, Catherine. Thank you. Uh, Great discussion. Thank you for your time. It's been really a pleasure to have you on this episode of the Healing with Coherence podcast. Thank you for all your wisdom and experience that you shared with us, and I really hope that all everyone that has been watching and listening enjoyed the discussion as much as I did. Thank you, Catherine.
Thank you so much for having me on today. It was a pleasure.
Thank you, everyone, for staying with us till the end of this beautiful discussion with Dr. Catherine Clinton. I hope you enjoyed our conversation and that you feel wiser than when the episode started, filled with new information, empowered with new knowledge. And if you feel so, please support us by sharing this episode with your networks, by subscribing if you have not yet subscribed to our channels, by liking, and just staying with us and looking forward to the next episode. I'm Michail. This is Healing with Coherence. Thank you so much for being with us, and I'll see you with our next guest. Bye bye.